Recording has started. So I'm actually going to talk about some of that stuff real quick. So today we're going to introduce the online internet debate. But before we get to the internet debate, I'm going to cover some stuff about the podcast. First, if you've uploaded your video, make sure that you can watch your video online. Okay, it should be a link to a YouTube account or Vimeo or Google Drive or something like that. If you can't watch it, nobody else can either. If you can watch it, log out of whatever service you're using and make sure that you can still view your video. There's this thing in education where people like to set videos to private for some unknown reason. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense because in reality, most of you are posting pictures and things to Facebook anyway. So you're sharing with people you don't know through Facebook, and stalkers are more likely going to go there than to a YouTube account that they can't necessarily associate with you. So just make it public. If not forever, then for at least the duration of this class. It'll make your life easier. Second, The Reflection is a podcast. I know it says written in there, and you can post a written reflection, but the whole point of doing the podcast reflection is to give you an opportunity to create an audio version of a reflection so that you're recording audio and that you understand how to do this process. Again, the easiest way to do this is to download Audacity, record using Audacity, and then upload to the internet using SoundCloud. Notes on the video. If you have an MSWMM file, that's a Microsoft Windows Movie Maker file, that is not a movie. That is a data file that tells the computer what parts of clips and everything your movie should use. So if you see that you have an MSWMF file, it will not play for anybody else on Earth. And what you need to do is you need to click File, Save Movie. You'll notice that there's a Save Project as well. Save Project gives you the MSWMF file. Save Movie for computer, and select a location on your computer to save it, and know where that location is. Make sure you keep track of that. Then go to YouTube. Your UAID should get you into YouTube. Upload to YouTube, Google Drive, wherever you want to upload it, Vimeo. Any of those places are fine as long as the settings are set to public. On that note, Google Drive is initially always set to private, so you want to make sure that you've changed the share settings in there to public. On iMovie, it's File, Share, File. You can share to YouTube, you can share to Facebook, you can share to Vimeo. Unless you have an extremely reliable, extremely fast internet connection, those options almost never work. Same thing's true with Microsoft Movie Maker. If you try and save movie and try and save it directly to YouTube or Vimeo or Google Drive or anything like that, it will most likely not work. Questions on movies? Yes, the deadline has obviously been extended. There's so many people who haven't gotten it in. I've had to, Nick.
The podcast is due today, though, right?
Podcast should be due by midnight tonight, yes.
And there's its own separate discussion board?
It's its own separate thing. That's the reflection, yeah.
Thank you.
Does it have to be on your Google site? Do you want us to leave it there?
It's going to be part of your academic portfolio for this class, so it will be on your Google site if you want credit for it eventually. If you want to have full marks for your portfolio.
But as of right now, it doesn't need to be.
Right, as of right now, it does not need to be.
Okay.
Do you want our podcast on the Google site too?
You probably want to put your podcast up on Google Sites as well. Remember, your portfolio, your academic portfolio is a showcase of the kinds of things that you want to do. So you want to demonstrate that you can do these things.
Okay, so this is probably going to sound really muddled and make no sense. Okay.
Great.
So our Google site, so that's like the same thing we use for our web quest, right? Like
Your
the same
Google
format.
site is just a house for your academic portfolio for this class. You can put a web quest on it. You can put a video on it. You can put pictures of your little dog Fufu, which I don't
So-
think you should.
At some point, we should have like our videos and our podcast on that. But if I link to SoundCloud like today, that's fine. As long as I get it there.
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. That's good. Great question. Yeah. So your Google site is to house your portfolio. So I know that some of you created your Google site as a means to build your web quest, and that's fine. If you built your site to be a web quest, that's okay. You can build a second site and then put a link on your second site to your web quest. That's okay. Some of you built your web quest as a page on Google Sites. That's fine. I'm going to be publishing a video over the next couple of weeks on how to edit your menu so that you can change around the pages and that your web quest doesn't have to be the landing page. Any other questions? All right. So in today's class, we're recording, by the way, so if you guys want to not chat. So in today's class, we're asking the question, what is an internet debate? How to meaningfully debate points, do an analysis of some arguments, and talk about supporting ideas. So, what is an internet debate? Here's a comic from XKCD. Are you coming to bed? I can't, this is important. What? Someone is wrong on the internet. How many of you have been in that situation where you've been mad at somebody on the internet? How many of you are ignoring me right now because you're doing something else? Yeah. I know that there's a lot of you who get into arguments on the internet. How do I know this? Because I'm on the internet and I see that there are always arguments going on the internet. Internet debates are usually criticized for being shallow, misanthropic, argumentative, miserable sorts of things. 9 times out of 10 on an internet debate, for whatever the reason, things seem to get really violent really quickly, and I'm not sure why that is. Well, I know exactly why it is, and we're going to talk about it in class. So, meaningful debate points. First of all, you want to avoid logical fallacies. Logical fallacies are where most of the arguments come from. Debate ideas and not people. It's never appropriate in a debate, online or otherwise, to say, well, you're just an idiot, that's why you're wrong. Once you start arguing against the person instead of the topic, you become a jerk. That's the only way to define it. Concede points and move on. If you're wrong, accept it. Don't take the debate personally. If somebody disagrees with you, they disagree with your ideas. They may not disagree with you as a fundamental human being. Support your ideas with facts and links. This is the biggest problem with online debates. So points 1 and 4, avoiding logical fallacies and supporting your ideas with facts and links, are the 2 biggest problems with online debates. Usually it becomes about people involved, and it also becomes about people not supporting ideas with facts and links. Now, as a note, if you do start debating your internet friends with facts and links, they will probably get mad at you. I don't understand that yet. But, and finally, be as concise as possible. Nobody wants to spend an afternoon reading a wall of text, and I guarantee you the more you type, the more you will be misunderstood. So be as concise as possible. So, let's talk about some logical fallacies. The first one is called ad hominem. Ad hominem is arguing against the person. There are a variety of different ad hominem arguments. The probably most popular is the ad hominem ad situation. So, well, of course, Governor so-and-so believes this. He's a Democrat, right? And it's categorizing them as a person within a system of beliefs, not necessarily challenging their argument. Of course, Dr. List is in favor of education in society. He's an education professor, right? Of course, everybody here loves the zips because we're all UA students. That last one probably illustrates the problem of ad hominem situation most clearly. There's also ad hominem abusive. Well, my opponent is clearly wrong because he is a filthy, stinking liar. Does that address the content of the argument? No, you're just calling your opponent names. The next logical fallacy is the fallacy of slippery slope. A humorous example of this is from Ghostbusters, where they're talking about the end of the world, and Bill Murray's character, Peter Venkman, starts ranting and raving and says, dogs and cats living together, pandemonium, things going crazy. And it's just this one situation deteriorating down into this horrible, horrible situation. You see slippery slope argument a lot of time in the debate about same-sex marriage. So on one hand, you have the people who are opposed to same-sex marriage saying, well, if we allow two guys to get married, then sooner or later they're going to be marrying sheep and trees and grounds and buildings and all of this stuff. That's obviously a slippery slope argument. It starts here and quickly de-escalates into this unreasonable conclusion. Next is the argument of ignorance. Well, nobody knows, so obviously I'm right. Arguments to ignorance typically go within obscure fields of science. So while nobody knows, historical argument to ignorance. In the 1980s, there wasn't a lot of research yet done on AIDS, so everybody, not everybody, but people were arguing, well, nobody knows where AIDS comes from, so obviously it comes from perverts and drug addicts. We now know that it seems to have stemmed from human primate transference. I'm not sure how that happened, but we have at least an idea now. Back in the 1980s, we had no idea, we had no facts, we had no science, so everybody was just conjecturing. Fallacy of division. So this is very commonly put into political situations. Obviously, the Democrats all believe the same thing. Is that true? No. Democrats don't all believe the same thing. But the fallacy of division says that if you were a Democrat, you believe this thing. So think about a big pile of straws and saying that all of the straws are exactly the same. And you pull out a straw and you look at it and it is the same as the straws on the outside. But that's not a guarantee that all of the straws will be the same. So you might have a pile of red straws with a blue straw in the middle. Fallacy of division is probably the most difficult fallacy to kind of wrap your mind around. Fallacy of false attribution / appeal to authority. These two go together very, very closely. A lot of times you'll see something like, Ben Stein, that's the guy's name. Ben Stein has said a variety of different things. So the most recent one is that Ben Stein is against tax cuts or something. I don't remember. Well, first of all, that's false attribution. He never said anything about tax cuts. He said if there were going to be tax cuts, it should look like this. But he didn't say the quotes that are floating around the internet. So that's false attribution. Or saying, Dr. List said that mushroom pizza is the best pizza ever, right? If you would have quoted that before just now, then it would be false attribution because I never said that. Yeah, pretty much just lying, flat out lying. But a lie that's attributed to somebody else. A friend of mine posts fake Gandhi quotes online because he thinks it's funny. Like, never believe everything you read on the internet, Gandhi. Usually this is an appeal to authority. So Gandhi is a big name in world peace. So people will attribute things to Gandhi. Mother Teresa, a voice for the poor, so people will attribute things to her. Ben Stein, people will attribute things to him because he's a super smart person. This fake attribution combined with the appeal to authority is the idea that, well, somebody smart said it who knows a lot about this field, so obviously it's true. A lot of times it's pretty easy to find out that no, it's not accurate. Judgmental language ties in a little bit with ad hominem, but is a little bit trickier. So judgmental language is like this. Anybody who believes this idea is stupid. You're not stupid, are you? So you affix this really denigrating, judgmental idea to the idea that you're arguing in hopes that the person will concede the point. You'll see this online a lot of times right now with relation to the Affordable Health Care Act. Anybody who believes that the Affordable Health Care Act is helping America is obviously ill-informed and ignorant of the facts. How many of you want to be ill-informed and ignorant of the facts? 2 people want to be ill-informed and ignorant. Okay, great. So, obviously, most people don't want to be considered ignorant and ill-informed. So, that's an argument that appeals to emotion, and it's, oh, well, obviously I don't know anything, so I want to stay away from this and agree with whoever's talking. A straw man. Again, with the Affordable Health Care Act. How many of you heard the argument that John Smith from the 3rd District in Kansas tried to get insurance with the Affordable Health Care Act because he lost his insurance due to the Affordable Health Care Act, and now he's paying 5 times as much? How many of you have heard that? It's been all over the news. If you've seen the news, then you've seen this argument. That's a straw man. We don't know who this person is. We're not provided with the details of his life. It could be that he was getting health insurance previously because he was working a full-time job somewhere. He might have gotten fired from that job for embezzling, and there might be a whole bunch of circumstances explaining why this happened, right? But the argument creates this straw man that's really easy to knock down, right? It's this fake argument that's very easy to defeat. Because obviously, if this is what's happening to every American, do we want the Affordable Health Care Act? No, we don't want the Affordable Health Care Act. Everybody's having to pay 5 times as much. It's terrible. And finally, appeal to emotion. Appeal to emotion is where an argument is made and somebody says, you should feel something about this. You should feel happy. You should feel angry. You should feel sad. You should feel ashamed. These are appeals to emotion. A lot of times in a political context, you'll see this as an appeal to fear. Have any of you seen the Common Core post about the horrible math problem? One person? Okay. So there's this post where a math problem is outlined in a confusing way. And people post, this is horrible, this is confusing, you should be, blah, blah, blah. It's an appeal to fear. The fear is that our children will not learn math in this new technique. It's not an appeal to the facts because the math problem is not explained. Or at least it's not explained in a way that is accessible to the average internet user. So, having said that, it's this appeal to fear. You should be afraid of this new type of math, even though nobody quite understands it. Once you do understand this new type of math and discover that it's been in practice for thousands and thousands of years, then all of a sudden that fear dissipates and you're not as afraid of it anymore. Are there any questions on these logical fallacies? There are hundreds more. I just tried to highlight some key logical fallacies that are very common in online debates.
With like the judgmental language, you said appeals to emotion. Can it kind of be like bandwagon, trying to get people to jump on the bandwagon?
Yeah, it can be.
Okay.
Like, And I left bandwagon off of here simply because people are obfuscating it with other logical fallacies, but you're absolutely right. So bandwagon, for those of you who don't know, is, well, everybody's doing it, so should you. Right now, bandwagon is being used primarily with Common Core. Everybody's against Common Core, so you should be against Common Core as well. They're not explaining why Common Core might be a bad idea, but they're using judgmental language to obscure that idea. So they're not saying everybody's in favor of it. They're saying only idiots are in favor of Common Core, right? So yeah, you're absolutely right. And you'll find that a lot of these are combined together. So like you'll see a slippery slope that ends with an ad hominem. So like with the same-sex marriage, you'll see the slippery slope down to bestiality and marrying trees and all sorts of crazy things. And then right on the end, so my opponent must be a Neanderthal in favor of these power ideas, right? And again, using ad hominem, judgmental language, straw man, appeal to emotion, combining a lot of these fallacies. Okay? Any other questions about logical fallacies? Great. So we've learned a little bit about logical fallacies in this setup for online debate. The question is this: why are logical fallacies bad? Why am I ranting and raving in front of the classroom for 10 minutes about logical fallacies? First of all, they obscure key points. If there's something that we do not need in today's society, it's an obfuscation of key ideas. We really already have no idea what we're talking about half the time. We don't need to make things worse by adding in logical fallacies. Fallacies often add confusion and does not lead to productive conclusions. So if you're using logical fallacies, then you're not becoming smarter. You're not gaining deeper understanding about things. You're just using logical fallacies to win an argument. It's just rhetorical devices. There are times to use rhetorical devices in debate. Online debate is a bad place to do it. And the reason is this last point. Logical fallacies will almost always raise the emotions of the people you're debating against because they're cheats. A logical fallacy is a debate cheat. What you're hoping to do is you're hoping to distract your opponent from the point that they're making and to argue against your logical fallacy. The best thing to do in any debate is to point out that they're using a logical fallacy, address the key points, and move on. When you start using logical fallacies, most people are going to start facing abusive situations, arguments back and forth, and so on and so forth. Now, having said that, avoiding logical fallacies will not always avoid raising the emotions of your opponent. And in some instances, by providing facts and critical points to your opponent, you will enrage them even further because they don't have anything. I've seen this a couple of times in the Common Core debate. People get really upset because they've bought into this idea that Common Core is inherently bad. And my argument typically is, well, first of all, Common Core is supported by the federal government but was designed by educators throughout the United States. Second of all, if you read the Common Core, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Are some implementations of Common Core bad? Probably. Should we throw out everything with Common Core? I don't know. People get mad because they want me to say Common Core is horrible, it's taking away student choice and that sort of thing. Alright. Now here is an argument in favor of something. Now I want you to look at it and tell me what's wrong with this argument in favor of something. So I'll read it out loud in case you can't see it. Our job is to teach children how to use the tools of the real world. After all, using a circular saw is dangerous too, but only through shop class have many students learned to build a birdhouse safely. So is it with technology. Parents and teachers must be a part of monitoring and modeling. It may be scary, but without us teaching students about appropriate use, they will surely encounter exactly that which we are most scared of. Okay, so what are some things that happen in this argument?
Slippery slope. They just kind of like went off like, well, if you don't do this, then this is going to happen.
Right. Obviously, without shop class, children are going to be running around cutting off their arms. Right?
Appeal to emotion. They're saying that your worst fear is going to happen if we don't do this.
Be afraid, be very afraid.
I was gonna say appeal to fear. So
Yeah,
basically-
feel the fear. Yeah, absolutely.
How do they know what we're scared of?
Exactly. And just for the record, what are we afraid of here?
No, that's the whole thing. Afraid no. It doesn't say.
Right?
It doesn't say.
It doesn't say.
No.
So it's an appeal to
You're fear.
ignorance.
Yeah, it's,
Right? So that's one of the cool things about an appeal to ignorance. Do you all have fears? Yes. So when we do this appeal to ignorance, it's this appeal to your deepest, darkest fear, whatever that may be. We've just activated that fear in association with that. What else do we have in here? So we have slippery slope, appeal to emotion,
ignorance.
appeal to ignorance.
A little bit of judgmental language that it's like, it's our job and like, obviously we need to do this. Like,
Obviously. I mean, who wouldn't do this? Right? There's no ad hominem argument here because there's no defined opponent. Right? So, it's one of the things, the argument sounds good, but it's completely fallacious. The entire thing is built on this premise. The other thing is the tools of the real world. Whose real world? Again, it's an appeal to ignorance, right? We're ignorant of what may be happening in these students' lives, so obviously it's technology. Now, likewise, the con argument. I'll read this to you. Teachers now teach printing an average of 10 minutes per day. Children who struggle with printing have limited ability to output their knowledge, as every subject still requires printing skill. A child who can't remember how to make their letters and numbers is a slow printer, channeling all of their mental energy into production as opposed to spelling and math. As frustration and embarrassment mount, many of these children are labeled with a learning disability and handed a laptop, when they really just need to be taught to print. The myth that computers will replace printing has not been borne true in education settings, and if, as adults, we are still printing, we should be teaching this essential skill to children. This one's entertaining. Come on, give me some.
well, they used to bring something in, but it's like, if you don't teach your kids how to print, they're going to have a learning disability.
That's right. Dysgraphia. Every child who learns to use a computer is going to have dysgraphia. Yeah.
At first, when it first started, I didn't think they were talking about printing as far as using your hand. I thought they were talking about printing from a computer.
I know, right?
I was like, well, wait a minute. It didn't.
Well, there'd be like ignorance in there because they're not like citing anything, and they're just saying these things happen. So I guess that's sort of the ignorance and whatever the straw man was.
Yeah, they're setting up the two things. So slippery slope sets up the straw man, which sets up the appeal to ignorance. Right? So the slippery slope is, well, if we don't teach our children how to write, they're going to have a learning disability. And if they don't have a learning disability, well, golly gee willikers, they're just going to fade into obscurity.
there's use of judgmental language at the end. As if, and if as adults we're still printing, we should be doing this.
Right. You all know how to print, so you should be teaching children how to print daily in classrooms. If you're not, you are a bad, bad teacher. Right? It's not explicitly stated, but it's definitely judgmental language. Right? Any other, yeah.
I feel initially because it says like you should feel frustrated and embarrassed.
Shame on you and your household. Did you have another one? Okay. So there are some, now in her defense, she did use some sources, but I took them out because they were crap. But we'll talk about that in a minute.
Is this something somebody actually wrote from
Yeah.
their class?
No, I took this from the internet. I'm not providing the link to this simply because I'm using it for purposes of pointing out what's wrong with it and why it's not correct. I don't want to be like, oh, and go to this person's website and email them and tell them they're stupid. So I'm leaving out their source for that reason. So facts, supporting ideas. When you go online and you start supporting ideas, you're going to be using facts to support ideas. Now, this con argument that we're going to have fun with. The author does use facts, but these facts need to be interpreted, right? So your facts support your ideas, but they also need to be interpreted. What does it mean when we see that students scan a web page instead of doing the traditional act of reading? What does that mean? What does it indicate for our students? Facts need to be directly related to the debate. A lot of times in debate, you'll see that facts are indirectly related to the debate. In 2000, George Bush was debating Al Gore. And the debate moderator said, question for Mr. Bush. Mr. Bush, do you believe that Americans should receive tax cuts? Mr. Bush's response, which I remember to this day because I died laughing. Well, I believe that hamburgers are an important part of American culture, and every American needs to have a hamburger. And if we can't afford to have our hamburgers, well, then something needs to be done about that. I'm like, why on God's green earth is Bush talking about hamburgers now? And what it was is this tangential fact. Are hamburgers a part of American culture?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when people come to the United States, foreign nationals often say, why are you so obsessed with hamburgers? Because think about it. We have hamburgers everywhere, right? So he was talking about that, and then he was talking about economics. And these facts were tangentially related to tax cuts, because the idea he was trying to get across in his folksy, oddball way is that tax cuts will provide more stable economic conditions. More people can buy hamburgers. Need hamburgers. So that is a tangentially related fact. You want to make sure that your facts are directly related to debate. A better response, more factually related, would have been, well, if we look at the Reagan era of economics, we'll see that tax cuts for the wealthy led into an era of prosperity, so on and so forth. That would have been more factually related, because he did intend on following Reaganomics. If a fact seems to be in contradiction to your point, figure out why. Okay? Next slide, we're going to talk about that. So contradictory facts. On the con slide, 2 slides ago, the author referenced an article by Manchin in 2008. Now, this article directly contradicted, using facts, directly contradicted what we know to be true about online reading. Manchin argued that people reading digital texts skimmed instead of reading deeply. Okay? What's wrong with that argument?
you don't know for sure that everyone's skimming instead of reading deeply, and you also don't know that people aren't skimming when they're reading printed text also.
Right, so we have this thing where skimming may happen in print text as well. It's really hard to determine that. What's another thing that we know?
What is the definition of skimming?
Definition of skimming is actually scanning, so looking at a page and not reading every word.
Was her like citations from a research situation, or where did she get her information from?
Point this one right here. She cites an article that doesn't support her conclusion. So yeah, there are research articles, but it doesn't. And the research article sort of says what she says, but it doesn't support her end conclusion. So that's a good point. How many of you have heard of this obscure thing called a Kindle? Right? Is a Kindle a digital text? 1 for a yes, a 2 for a no. Yes. How many of you know somebody who owns a Kindle? Do any of you own a Kindle yourselves?
I don't vote.
A Nook. Okay, that's fine. Some sort of e-text reader. Would you say that you skim using a Kindle?
No.
So Manjin is applying this idea to all types of digital text without providing support, right? The other thing she does is she cites this article by Coiro, 2004. Julie Coiro is a new literacies researcher. She was at Connecticut University. I don't know where she is right now. But she found that students are more likely to skim text when doing online searches. Right, so not full reading, right? And her conclusion was that students are able to ascertain meaningful information through this scanning of text and identify meaningful information through scanning. So they're not engaging in deep reading, but they're still finding out what information needs to be found out.
Isn't that that's how I was taught to do an internet search, was to scan. When you find something important, that's when you focus and read.
Exactly. So Manjin's conclusion is that scanning does not yield the results that we're hoping for. Coiro's conclusion is this is an effective search skill. So you see what's happening is Manjin is producing an argument based on misinterpretations of text and misrepresentations of ideas. So now what we do is we go through and we better understand Manjin's arguments. Then we can challenge it. We could say, Manjin is arguing against digital text, but clearly people are able to read and engage digital text. One of her article, I should post this up online for you all to read because it's really, really entertaining. One of her things is that people cannot read effectively if they don't have a piece of paper in their hands. Does that not just think anybody else is patently absurd?
Well, my point is what happens is you have a Nook and you're reading that. You have to hold a sheet of paper in your hand.
Oh, she's arguing that yes, you would have to hold the
I mean, you have to hold a sheet of paper in your other hand while you're reading your Kindle or your Nook.
I don't know what her argument is, but it's really entertaining when you start looking at it. So, her conclusion is at the end of the day, it's not logical. Why would it be that we have to have a multisensory experience in order to read? That doesn't make sense, that we have to smell and touch the book, is her argument. Otherwise, we don't remember. Yeah?
Well, this is what happened to when people started reading before they were able to actually keep their hands on books, when they were using the little black board things.
Well, obviously, I don't know.
But she doesn't think about when it first pretty much started.
I've made facetious arguments about that, about the introduction of pen and paper into the classroom, and I've made blog link posts about people arguing against the use of pen and paper in the classroom, and that I learned using a chalkboard just fine. And it's
right.
patently absurd.
My great-great-great-great-great-grandfather learned on hieroglyphics. What's that mean? Nothing.
The argument is this. Reading evolves and changes, and Manchin actually introduces a new type of logical fallacy, appeal to history. We've always done it that way, so we should always do it that way. All right. So this is an introduction to our online debate. And we're going to get started on this in class, just to make sure that there's no confusion. So we're going to, we have a half an hour left in class. We're going to do a work day for the rest of class. I ask that you stay and work. There's lots of questions about videos. There's lots of questions about the podcast. And I'm sure there will be questions about this. So our debate topic is this. Common Core is a good idea for education. That's the statement. Essentially, the question will be, is Common Core good for public education? Stage 1 will be a Twitter debate. Now, lots of people tell me that Twitter is a terrible forum for debate, which doesn't answer the question, why do I keep seeing so many debates take place on Twitter? Because obviously, it is a perfectly reasonable location for a debate. Then we're going to use a website called TriCider. There's a link up on Springboard in the forum to the TriCider website. TriCider is a site that has the ability to post an answer and then support conclusions for it. And then at the end of it, you can vote pro or con. And then finally, we're going to go into stage 3 of our online debate. And what will happen over the next week and a half, I will post, okay, Twitter discussion's over, go to TriCider. TriCider discussion is over, go to the forum posts. So in the forum discussion, I want to know, what do you think? So for Twitter and TriCider, you're going to be assigned pro or con. So if you're assigned pro today, then you'll be con for TriCider. If you're assigned con today, you'll be assigned pro for TriCider.
This is for a Common Core, right?
This is for the debate about Common Core is a good idea for education. Okay. And then finally, so once we get into the forum, I want to know your real thoughts. Where do you fall on this? Which side has a stronger argument? And finally, do you think Common Core will stick around? And what do you think will be the lasting impact of Common Core's existence? So even if Common Core goes away tomorrow, it will have existed and will influence future legislation related to education. What do you think that legacy is going to look like? Okay. Any questions on online debate? All right. So when you go to the forum, you'll see there are some further instructions about Twitter. So what I want everybody to do is follow the people who are following me, right? So you're following education professionals, and that's great. But you need to follow all of your classmates for this as well. Okay? Which should still keep you under the 100 limit. Have I told you all about the 100 limit?
I'm just over.
You're just over 100?
103.
What?
You're done for the semester.
That's it. You have reached metacognition on Twitter.
I failed.
What?
No.
How many years was that? Wait, more than that.
No. So 100, you follow 100 people on Twitter. That's the max that you want to usually have, because when you start following more, you get too many tweets in a day and it's hard to keep up. Twitter then becomes a full-time job.
So if you said that you want us to follow everyone who's following you, does that mean we're following people in the other class as well?
Yep. Everybody in this debate, so this whole debate outside the forum is going to be a 2-class activity.
101. I'm at 101. And I got 7 followers.
There you go. So we're going to use the hashtag AET debate. Okay, that stands for Akron Ed Tech Debate. AET debate. And I want you to be using links to support your arguments. Okay? AET, Akron Ed Tech Debate. So AET debate. And if you look on Twitter and see my last tweet was,
Are you ready for a debate? Hashtag AET debate.
yo.
No.
Then there's the link for the Tri-Cider. I'm going to be posting a video tutorial on how to use Tri-Cider. I've already recorded it. I just need to edit it. Then forum discussions. What do you think, and so on and so forth. And this is the forum here. I just put all the instructions together. Questions on the online debate.
When does it start? When do we begin debating?
Ready? Go. No.
And assign us.
I have to assign you Chrome
Okay.
Cod.
Right.
And then how are you going to tell us whenever we switch to Tri-Cider?
I'm going to send out an email. So you all need to be checking your UAkron email.
Is
Yeah.
there like, do we have to have so many tweets?
Well, I mean, you have to be participating in the debate. You can't be lurking.
So for stage 3, are we taking, after arguing both sides, we're taking our own position?
Yep. Stage 3 is your position statement.
You know, learn what's kind of cool.
I know, right? I'm making you learn education stuff. What's up with that? Can somebody push the record button on the video camera? Thank you. Yeah, somebody went outside.